G'day there guys, Marky here, and welcome back to another episode of r/relationship advice. I do hope you enjoy today's episode, and with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, let's get right into it. Posted by user Cheesecake Tricky, titled, Am I the asshole for not wanting to name my baby after my late mother-in-law? I, 26 female, am pregnant with me and my husband's 28 male daughter, and we can't agree on a name for the baby. Like we can't even sit down and make a list of names to consider. My husband keeps insisting that he wants our daughter to be named after his mum. Her fake name was Mildred, so our daughter would be getting bullied for having an old lady name, since that's just how kids are and will always be. He keeps saying that we can just call her Millie, but her name would still be Mildred and would still be on the roll call as Mildred. Not only that, but Mildred was horrible to me. She was sweet as sugar around everyone, but as soon as it was just the two of us, she was the cruelest person imaginable and made it abundantly clear that she despised me. I don't want to name my daughter after a woman who hated me from day one. My husband has never believed me when I told him how Mildred treated me, and I thought that it was just normal for a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to disagree, and that I was just over-exaggerating. He and Mildred were very close. He visits her all the time, calls all the time, everything. Towards the end, he would visit her multiple times a week in the hospital, usually for hours at a time. He'd go straight to her after work and stayed until he was told to leave. Her death devastated him, so I understand that he wants to honor her, but I can't ignore how she treated me when he wasn't around. I feel like I'm losing my mind. My husband doesn't want to call our daughter anything but Mildred, and I want to call her anything other than Mildred. Am I really the asshole? Edit. My husband won't compromise. He doesn't want Mildred as a middle name. His reasoning being that no one cares about middle names, and that since it won't be her first name, it won't really be honoring her. At least not enough, since Mildred is our daughter's grandmother and not like a great aunt or something. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. I might be the asshole because I don't want to name my daughter Mildred after my mother-in-law, even though my husband wants to honor her memory. In the comments, Training Moment says, not the asshole. Why don't you start insisting to name her after your mother? See how that would make him feel. Forget how that would make him feel. She should throw her mum's name into the ring. Her grandmother's name for that matter. OP is definitely not the asshole for wanting a name other than that of her mother-in-law's for her baby girl. To name a child, you need 2 yeses. In this case, there is only one, so veto. You could also agree for Mildred to be the middle name. Also, red flag for your husband not believing how your mother-in-law treated you. Not the asshole. P.S. If he feels this strongly about the name, and with the way that he didn't believe you, you might be wary of him declaring the birth and naming her Mildred while you're still recuperating from the birth. This. Ensure you speak to the nursing staff and doula so that he can't go behind your back. Yeah, be careful. This is great advice. My dad changed my name last minute to something that he recently decided he liked, and my mum is a total pushover. She was mad, but went along with it. So just make sure nursing staff are aware. Not the asshole, your husband is being a bully. I was also named by my father after a traumatic birth. I always hated my name. My father was in charge of the birth certificates, and he spelled my name wrong. Not the asshole, but your first problem is your husband utterly dismissing your word and feelings about how your mother-in-law treated you. That really needs to be addressed. Maybe in therapy with a mediator so that he takes it seriously, or it's going to fester. I'd ultimately recommend a very small compromise on your part, since she meant so much to him, using the first initial of her name to start your child's middle name, nothing more. I couldn't agree more. I do think that there are red flags here, in that he's trying to strong-arm a unilateral decision here, that OP doesn't have a choice in the name of the child and he's going to be pissed off if it's anything other than Mildred. Why does he continue to be with her if he doesn't believe that his mother was an asshole to his partner? Like, to me, that's just so upsetting that you'd get married to someone and your partner is supposed to be number one in your life, but still they put their mother above you, even after all is said and done. Like, their own mother is more important than their family. Much to ponder, but definitely not the asshole in my opinion. Update. We found a compromise. It took me having to track down an ex to tell him that Mildred wasn't all sugar and spice and everything nice, but he finally understood and we had a long talk. He still wanted to call the baby Mildred, but agreed that it was a little too old. We compromised on Amelia, with Millie for short, so that there's still a homage to Mildred as they were very close. I'm ready to pop and we are happier than ever. In the comments, Gonzo Puro says, "Congratulations again, and Amelia is a beautiful name. But the fact that your husband would still want to honor the woman who was abusive to you is not a good look for him. Make sure that you're the one filling out her birth certificate info, just in case." If you think this person is crazy, my mum filled out my birth certificate while my dad was busy getting her food. She said, "Hey, just put your info down and I'll fill out the rest while you go down to the cafeteria. My name should have been Ricky. It most definitely is not."
God damn it, Ricky Bobby.
You having to track down one of his exes to get him to believe you is a massive red flag. Totally agree. He believes the ex, but not his own wife? Yikes. Why do women sleep with and get pregnant by men who either think they are 1, liars or hysterical, or 2, are effing stupid? This has always been absolutely baffling to me. Now, I do understand that some people hide their true colors and become horrible after marriage or having kids. That really sucks and must be terrible to deal with, but so many posts, and I've seen this in real life too, are from people, I've seen all gender identities and sexualities with this issue, who say that they're dating a person with some issues that bother them, and then married them and had kids, and now they're shocked Pikachu face that this person still has this issue? Like, why exactly are they surprised? Their partner has been consistent the entire time. Our next post is by user Savings Carpenter, titled, "Am I the asshole for telling my parents they were horrible and saying they shouldn't have more kids?" Hi, first time posting. I, 16 male, was born when my parents were very young. Like, my mother was 16 and my father was 17. Both families decided that it would be best for me if effectively my maternal grandparents raised me and my bio parents got to live their lives. That's not to say that I didn't know who my actual parents were. This is not one of those situations like in the movies where the mother pretends the daughter's child is actually her own. I and everyone knew who my progenitors were. My father moved away when he was 18, but my mother remained in my grandparents' house until she was 23 and I was around 7, but that doesn't mean that we were close. She always treated me more like an annoying little brother rather than a son. She didn't like spending time with me, never attended any of my school functions, or showed interest in my academic work, or took me to do any fun activities. Whenever I was talking about my day, she would roll her eyes or change the topic to shut me up. When she moved out, I barely saw her. She just came to family gatherings and said an awkward hi and did not even look at me. It hurt, even if by that point I already considered my grandparents to be more parents than her. My father was still living away. They weren't together at this point, but would come once or twice a year to visit his own family around the holidays, and always made it a point to visit me and take me to do some sort of fun activity like going to the cinema or my favorite restaurant. Things like that. But to me, he was more like a strange man than a dad, because when I compared him to my friend's father who picked them up from school every day and went to their games and played with them on the weekends, I didn't understand why this man, who I saw maybe twice a year, was supposed to be the same. Anyway, fast forward to a year ago, my father moved back to the same city where we live. He tried to hang out with me more often, but I wasn't really interested, although sometimes I complied. I don't hate him, I just don't know him. I even had a bedroom in his apartment, which is cool, because he lives in the center of the city. Behind everyone's back, both my parents had started to hang out, and a couple of months later, they announced that they were dating. It was a shock. They asked me to move in with them to my father's apartment, which I refused, but they argued that we could finally be a family. I was about to start an argument with them when my grandma just said that changing school districts would be very inconvenient, and I could lose all my friends, and the situation de-escalated by itself, although my parents didn't let go of the idea. My parents asked for me to spend more time with them, and this was particularly frustrating because even though I had never had any particular tension with my father, I most definitely do with my mother. I don't like being around her, and she's treated me poorly my whole life. and I feel like she's now only trying to save face because she knows my dad wants me there. Now on to the issue. Last week, they both came into my grandparents' house. They announced that they were going to buy a house nearby in the neighborhood so that I can finally move in with them. I immediately said no, and when they said that changing schools would no longer be an issue, I found myself trapped in a corner, and I said that was never the problem, and that I just simply don't see them as my parents and don't want to live with them. That's when they dropped the bomb on us. Not only did they want me to move in with them so we could finally be a family, but my mother was pregnant, so we were going to be a bigger family. I was shocked, and I blew my lid on them. I told them that they were the worst parents in the world, and that they abandoned me at 16, and now they were going to bring another child into the world and do the same to them? And they never apologized for treating me like garbage and like a mistake that they made, and making me feel like I wasn't supposed to exist, and dumping me to be other people's responsibility. And only now that they feel like they care, they want to be my family. My mother screamed back at me, telling me I was a brat and that she wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, raising her second baby, and I told her she never raised me to begin with. And my father said that they were young and trying to do the best they could. Well, guess what? The best you could was pretty effing bad. I stormed out and went to my room sobbing. I've been very depressed for the last week. They've both called and texted since, but I ignored them. My grandparents agree with me, and I shouldn't move, and that my parents shouldn't expect me to be all loving and forgiving after how they've treated me. However, they believe that they are starting a new chapter in their lives now, and they are far more mature and stable, which I guess leaves me behind. I've also had time to think. I'm the same age that my mother was when she had me, and what a huge responsibility that must have been. However, I still can't forgive them. Am I the asshole for the way that I reacted to the news? More info on the relationship with mum and dad. OP says, my father really wants us to be a happy family. When the three of us together, you can see him beaming with joy, like he can't stop himself from smiling and making comments like, this is everything one could possibly want, and stuff like that. I think my mother has probably sold him a completely different story on what our relationship was growing up when he left, and he doesn't seem to notice the tension between her and I. As far as my living arrangements, they would have to pull me screaming out of my grandparents, and they signed away the paternal rights sometime after I was born, so I don't think they even have a legal foot to stand on if it came to that, but I just hope that they can come to respect my decision. Someone else says, when you're ready, consider meeting your dad alone to find out information from him, and OP says, I was thinking that too. I want to have a conversation with my father, mostly about my concerns about my mother and what to do moving forward. The more I think about this, the more I'm scared about my little sibling because I'm not sure how my mother would take care of them. I'm starting to feel like there's a lot of things that I don't know about the time when I was born, and why I was effectively abandoned because my other set of grandparents, paternal, don't live that far away, and I see them occasionally, but it's always more uncomfortable with them. They have other children and grandchildren, whereas my mother is an only child. So when I visit them, I feel like the odd one out because I'm usually alone in a big family environment. But about why my dad didn't reach out to me, I don't know, and I want to confront him about that. As far as I'm aware, when he was away, he didn't keep much contact with my mother either. This is just since he came back. That's why I feel like I need to talk with him and set things straight, because I feel so lost, honestly. Back up to the post, there is an edit. Thank you everyone for the verdict of not the asshole. I feel better, and it has somewhat cleared my mind. Also, huge thank you to all that are commenting about how awesome my grandparents are. I'm planning on showing them this post so they can see how much everyone can see the amazing kind of people they are, and they deserve all of the love and appreciation I could possibly give them, and more. I've also come to the conclusion that I have a lot of resentments and unanswered questions, as well as misgivings about the future that I need to set straight with primarily my father. He needs to know how I grew up, and I need to know why he abandoned me. I also feel like I need to warn him about my mother because I'm worried about my sibling being abandoned and mistreated like I was. so I'm preparing a list of points and questions that I want to bring up to him, and we'll meet tomorrow or the day after, and I'll confront him with all of these to hopefully get some sort of closure or resolution. Update. Hi everyone, thank you for all the responses. It really helped a lot. It's been an emotional couple of days and a lot has happened. My mind's a little bit dispersed, but I feel like I owed you all an update, and I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. For those of you who didn't read my OP, the gist of it basically was that my 16 male parents had me when they were very young, 16 female, 17 male. They got separated and left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents. My mother was around but couldn't care less about me, but my dad went away and we had very sporadic but positive contact. Now he's come back, they're back together, they're having a new baby, and they want me back into their lives. I refused and told them they're horrible and shouldn't have kids, which brings us to the OP. First of all, I shared my post with my grandparents, and they were so surprised by it. They were very happy to see how many people commented about how amazing they are, and I, in turn, also took the opportunity to tell them how much I loved them and how much I appreciated everything they had ever done for me. They are my real parents, and nothing is ever going to change that. There were some tears, and they told me they loved me and how proud they were of me. They never thought of themselves of doing something special or worth so much appreciation. They were just taking care of family, but they're the best. After that, I tried to collect my thoughts and arrange a meeting with my father to discuss the things that were bothering me. Like, why did he abandon me? Why did he think he could just reappear into my life like that? That I wasn't going to move in with them, and I didn't consider them my parents because they never acted as such, etc. We met at a park, and he went to hug me, but I stepped away. And he looked hurt, and he just apologized for what happened the other day and went into this speech about how we could try to transition into living together part-time and respect my boundaries, and I went blank. I didn't expect for him to talk, so I pulled out my phone and just showed him the post that I made the other day, and he started reading it in silence. After a while, he read it all and some responses, and he just asked me if this was true. And I said yes, and he said that if I had any questions, he would answer them honestly. I asked what happened when I was born, and he told me that when my mother got pregnant, all options were laid on the table. Abortion, adoption, marriage, Gramps taking care of me, only one of my parents taking me in. My mother was deadly scared of adoption because some religious groups had told them some horror stories about dead babies and mothers being killers or some BS like that. So she wanted to give me up for adoption, but my father refused. He couldn't bear the idea of having his child living somewhere and never seeing him again. So he proposed to taking me in as sole caretaker and leaving his college plans to stay in our city. But his parents weren't happy with that plan, so they pushed him to go to college so that he could provide economically for me. They offered themselves to take care of me, but they were significantly older than my maternal grandparents. She was an only child, and at that time, they were just 40, whereas my father has 5 older siblings, and his parents were already in their 60s. And since taking care of me meant taking care of my mother for a while as well, my maternal grandparents decided that it was the best decision for them to take me. Also, immediately after I was born, my mother had postnatal depression, and the doctors advised them to not completely remove them from her side, or more damage to our relationship could be done, and my grandparents wanted her to eventually love me as a son. One thing to note about my father that I didn't mention in my OP is that even when he was in college, he worked part-time to pay child support, and once he started working in a law firm, he started sending more money to my grandparents and set up a college fund for me, which was news for me. My grandparents don't know about this, but my mother does, so I don't know what to do with this information. My father thought of me the entire time he spent away and believed he had left me with a happy family and that he was working to give me a better life, but I followed his life through social media. He went to parties, vacations, had girlfriends, and did lots of fun stuff and barely had any contact with me. I asked him why couldn't he have made more of an effort to be a part of my life. Like, I understand if he needed to study in another city and work there, but it's no effort to call or text. Coming once a year just doesn't cut it. He looked ashamed and apologized to me, and I took advice that I saw in the comments here that I would forgive, but not forget, and that maybe we can build a relationship going forward, but it'll always be marked by his actions in the past. If he hasn't been my dad for 16 years, he can't start now. He seemed sad, but accepted my conditions. I then told him about my concerns about my mother, told him how bad he treated me as a child, that I didn't think she would be a good mother for my sibling, and that I wanted to go low/no contact with her. He said that after he left for college and they broke up, he would call her once in a while to check up on things, but that quickly ended, and when he came back, she explained to him that her and I had a great bond, and even though we didn't see each other daily, it was because I was in those teenage years, and that she loved spending time with me and had been a very hands-on mum. I told him that everything she said was a lie, and that she had never cared for me. He obviously read the stuff from my post, but I also told him other things like when she would ask my grandparents for babysitting money for taking care of me, or that she would call me annoying or disgusting to my face when we still lived together, and that severely messed me up. He was very serious and said he would talk to her, but that he really would not allow a child to be treated like that, and that he was sorry for letting that happen to me. Lastly, he told me that I would have a bedroom in his house, but he perfectly understood that I would never live there. He was quite emotional at this point and got choked up when he asked me if, even if I didn't consider him my father, would I consider his baby my sibling. I said of course, and that I planned to be a very active part in their life if I could. He started crying and asked if he could hug me, and this time I agreed. I'm happy about the resolution of our conversation, and I really do believe he'll be a good parent for my sibling. Once again, thanks to everyone who commented and took interest in my story. I don't know if I'll update again. Final update. So, a lot of you warned me about shit hitting the fan, so to speak, when my bio mother talked to my dad, and today, that's exactly what happened. My father sent me a text early in the morning warning me about the fact that he was going to confront my mother and that he didn't want anything to splash into me, and reassured me that he believed me completely. And I braced myself because I expected her to call me berating me or something. I truly don't care about what she thinks, but these past few days have been emotionally draining, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for another full-blown confrontation. Using Reddit to vent has been helpful though. After a few hours, my mother pulled up to our house and let herself in, screaming like mad and calling me every name in the book, saying that I had ruined her relationship and asking me why had I been blabbing about private matters that doesn't concern anyone. I said that my childhood matters to me, and my father is also going to be the future father of her child, and that her actions ruined her relationship. She called me an asshole and said that I was the biggest effing mistake she's ever had in her life. I didn't know she could still hurt me, but that was a low blow. And I said that I would do anything in my power to take her baby away from her because she was a monster of a mother. We were screaming at this point, and my grandparents, who were in the backyard, must have heard us and entered the room and separated us and heard part of the fight. I was fighting tears, and my grandma walked me upstairs to my room as my grandpa screamed to my mother, "How dare she speak to me that way?" My grandma soothed me a little and then went to confront my mother with my grandpa. I heard from the door how they ripped my mother a new one. They confronted her, telling her the things that she did, for treating me like garbage all my life, and for lying to my father. They told her how disappointed they were for her always treating me with disgust, and how many excuses they made for her, thinking she was a child trying to raise a child, but she was now an adult, and her behavior continued the same, and they said they were on the path of disinheriting her. My mother was screaming about how hard it had been for her, and how much she hurt, but my grandparents were having none of that. They raised me, and she was allowed to have the life that she wanted, and to take all the decisions she wanted without repercussions ever, and I even heard them say that if there was any custody battle that ensued over the baby to come, they would take the father's side, unless she radically changed everything about her behavior. They went outside for a while, so I don't know what they said, but eventually they came into my room, and my grandparents looked extremely serious, and my mother was red and crying, and apologized to me through gritted teeth. I didn't respond, but my grandparents said on her behalf that she was going to start therapy immediately, and she was no longer welcome in the house. I called my father after the debacle, and he was furious. He talked to my mother before going to a work meeting thing or something, and he confronted her about everything. Apparently it was nasty, but he was willing to work on the relationship for the good of the baby on the condition that my mother would also be working on improving her relationship with me so that whenever I visited them, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. After he left, he made her promise that she wouldn't contact me until they talked again, but there's my mother for you folks. I asked him to think on what's better for himself and for the baby, and to not hold today against my mother if he doesn't want to. Also, a thing that's come up in a lot of the comments on my previous posts is that my progenitors only want me as a babysitter and that I should steer away from them and baby for my own sake. But I wanted to make a point about that. I can't say anything about their intentions. I know nothing about them, but I'm really excited to have a sibling. Growing up, I had a very small family. It was just my grandparents and me. On my paternal side, I had a huge family with aunts, uncles, and cousins, but whenever I went there, I always felt like the odd one out. They tried to include me and visited me for Easter, Christmas, barbecues and stuff, but I didn't really know them, and although they were nice, I always felt like I had a big sign on my head that said, "That kid John had in high school." I can't wait to have a sibling and love them and always be there for them and show them what a family is. I want to be that person they can always rely on for them, and I want to feel that bond with someone. So even if I have my misgivings about my parents, and I do, I have a lot of them, I do not have any misgivings about being a big brother. I hope that this is the last update and that there is no more family drama in the future. Thank you all for all of your help. Having the site to air out my frustrations and having a community to back me up and give me feedback has been amazing, and you truly have helped me out a lot to deal with all of this, so really, thank you so much. In the comments, Leah Love Food says, "This poor kid. Those grandparents are saints for stepping up, and I do hope things improve so that OP's younger sibling can have a good life. And I pray that other Redditors are wrong, and that the only reason the total POS parents want OP in their lives is to be a free, built-in babysitter for the new baby. But seeing how often that posts show up on Reddit, I tend to agree with them. But the mother's reaction to finding out that the dad knows the truth said everything that I needed to know. That she's still a POS and is probably using OP. Yeah, and I don't have high hopes for Dad remaining as upright as he seems. And it is still surface level because he let 16 years slide with barely an acknowledgement of his failure as a parent at the moment. Even if he gets sole custody of both kids, how likely is he to be hands-on single dad versus finding a bangmaid to become the new mummy while he travels for work and the cycle continues with baby 3? Damn, I need to get off Reddit. I'm hopeful that he really just didn't understand the situation. He was sending money and taking OP to do fun things when he could, which in a lot of circles is what a dad is supposed to do. And he thought that OP had a mum and both sets of grandparents on a more regular basis. He could have felt superfluous. Now that he knows what's up, his reactions have been pretty good. But that's just what I hope, and without further updates, what I choose to believe. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!